Hi, this is Jack Stanley, and I wanted to talk about something very important, and that is our crumbling infrastructure. You know, we always talk in the United States about the great connections we have, the highways, the railways, the airways, the electrical, and blah, blah, blah. And yes, they're all pretty incredible. Maybe I should say they all were pretty incredible. Because we are facing a crisis right now. And that is that our infrastructure is crumbling. Our infrastructure is falling apart because we have not kept up with its maintenance. It's very true, and it's true in so many different ways. And I wanted to talk about some of the stuff and how our infrastructure has created situations not only dealing with transportation and communication and electrical and various buildings and bridges, but also about us as a people. And I will get to all this, but I'd like to start first off in mentioning the fact that infrastructure it covers a wide array of things. Think of bridges and roadways and of course our aging electrical system. Our electrical grid is rather antiquated. Our train systems are very antiquated. Roadways. We had the massive highway program that was done under the Eisenhower administration. And I have to tell you, that's 60 years ago. And things haven't been done too much since then, of that kind of scale. And it needs upkeep. We have tens of thousands of bridges in this country. Many of them are very old. Many of them are in somewhat precarious condition. I know there were certain bridges here in the New York metropolitan area that were of frightening qualities, like the Pulaski Skyway. One of those bridges that was standing just because it was used to it, more or less. And now it's finally getting fixed. The Tappan Zee Bridge was in very bad shape, and they're replacing it because it was so bad. But I must tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that there are so many bridges just in New York City. If I let me just throw 5 bridges of various ages at you. We have the Brooklyn Bridge, famous bridge. It's 135 years old. That's amazingly old for a bridge. Of course, it's strong, but it needs lots of repairs. We have the Manhattan Bridge. The Manhattan Bridge is well over 100 years of age, almost 110 years of age. You have the Williamsburg Bridge. That's close to like 114 years old. And of course, the Williamsburg Bridge went through some serious problems about 30 some odd years ago. I remember they hadn't done inspections in years. And they finally decided to check on all the supports underneath the bridge under the water in the 1980s. And they went under the water and discovered that most of the cement had vanished. And what was holding the bridge up was the iron or steel rods within the cement. And that bridge was standing in many respects just because it was used to it. And you had subways going across that. You had tons of traffic. And I have to tell you, the day of that report on the news, and they closed the bridge down the next day, by the way, I had crossed that bridge in a truck. That didn't make me feel good, I'll tell you that. That's kind of frightening. But this is very serious. Those are 3 bridges going across the East River in New York City. Then we have newer bridges, sort of like the George Washington Bridge. That's only 86 years old. And then you have the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, which is one of the babies here. It's only about 54 years of age. But we had massive building programs which we have not kept up with, and I know the funding isn't there, but the funding should be. sometimes a military emergency gets a massive support of cash, money from the federal government. This is just as important, because if our infrastructure falls apart, we're in a great deal of trouble. Now take a look at our railways. Good Lord, our railways are in rough shape. You know, we had some of the best railway systems from the 1870s to the 1950s. And then they got dirty, and they cut routes, they cut companies, and they put it all under Amtrak. And Amtrak is not a very good system, to be very honest. And you know, it's hard to get anywhere through these systems, and it's ridiculously expensive. You know, there was a strong push in the United States starting in the 1930s to get rid of trolleys and replace them with buses. This was pushed by GM, by the way. And they tore up trolley tracks all over the country. You know, it used to be easy to get from one town to another via the trolley systems. I remember my great uncle telling me a story about when he was a kid. And he was born in 1907, and this was when he was about 16 years old, maybe 15, 16. He was going to see the Yankees play at the Polo Grounds, and he took the various trolleys and eventually got to the Hudson, and then took the tubes under the Hudson River. And then, of course, took more trolleys all the way to the Polo Grounds. And he said he got there, the game had started, and Babe Ruth had just hit a home run just as he walked in. What an exciting thing. But you know something? That cost all of about 5 or 10 cents to do that. Now, the world has changed a lot. But I'll tell you something, those trolleys were fantastic, and we replaced them with buses. Buses that had issues, and buses that got stuck in traffic, and nowadays rather unreliable in many respects. And we're creating light rail systems here and there, which is glorified trolley car tracks. We had it all. We don't have it now. It's kind of pathetic what we have right now. Many of our train systems have gone downhill rapidly, because they're not being supported. And you know, we're pushing mass transit, yet we're making it so pathetically bad that people are going out of their way to avoid it. And that leads us to other things about ourselves. Let's think about the fact of starting in the 1930s and 40s and 50s. We were pushing the automobile. Why walk? Why take a bus? Why take a train? Why take a trolley? You can drive. And that's what we did. We drove and drove and didn't walk, and we started getting fatter than cows. I don't know if people realize this. And an interesting point to bring up is a number of years ago, when they were redoing the seats at Yankee Stadium before they tore down the stadium. And they were replacing all the old seats that had been put there when it opened up. And they put in a whole new series of seats. And they had to add several inches to each of those seats because we were fatter than what we once were. And that's become an epidemic as well. And that is due, in some respects, to what we use to replace a lot of our infrastructure. We need to walk more. We need to take mass transit and walk in between stops. Not just drive everywhere. Not just drive to the store. Walk. Because infrastructure is more than just what's built. You know, the infrastructure is part of our bodies. We have to take care of that as well. And I don't know what to do with our train system. I mean, we have a national emergency here with that. We should be building new train tracks. We should be trying to find ways of subsidizing, perhaps deregulating railways to put competition in there. I mean, this is terrible. And you know, the sad part is, if we don't fix this now, our bridges, our roadway, our trains, our electrical system, our electrical grid is mature. If we don't fix these things, it's going to come back to haunt us tremendously. And it's not going to be a simple little fix. It's going to require a massive, massive fix. Now, my feeling is this, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I've never been one to hold back my thoughts at times. Why not make some of these projects part of the Army Corps of Engineers? Why not create government jobs, like a WPA, and hire people through the government to build new railways, to build roadways, to work on the electric grid, to work on building trolley tracks? You know, we kind of did this years ago. What's wrong with doing it now? Lots of people are unemployed. Lots of people are on welfare. Make a deal. You're on this form of welfare, but we can offer you work. And if you do the work, then you can get the welfare. If you want to have a job, join the WPA or whatever you want to call it. But make use, of government operations and many who are unemployed, who don't have jobs. Be a great thing. Take pride in your country. Rebuild things. This is important stuff, and I just don't see it being addressed much. And it won't get addressed until something happens. If some massive bridge collapses in New York, or train systems, which we're already seeing problems with the train system, if we see a massive accident in which there is a tremendous loss of life, that will snap us into action. But do we really have to wait for that to happen? I hope that we won't. But I fear that that might be the result. So, ladies and gentlemen, think about your infrastructure. Think about what surrounds you. Think about the bridges, the electrical system, the trains, the trolleys, and also us. We need to take care of this country at home. We take care of many countries all over the world. It's time to start looking after ourselves. It's time to fix what's wrong at home. Because if we don't fix it, it will cause us a lot of misery in the not too distant future. Thank you.